Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Produce Buzzers podcast. We are so happy you have joined us today, and I think you will be too after the show is over, because you will learn a lot about fresh fruits and vegetables, how to select and store them, how to prepare and cook them, and surprising facts about their history and origin. We hope it inspires you to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, not only for your health, but also for your delight and pleasure as you explore their amazing world of taste and delicious flavors. Eating more of them will transform your life in so many positive ways. So settle back, relax, and get ready for another delicious adventure with the Produce Buzzers. So, Produce Buzzers podcast fans, welcome to another delicious episode of the Produce Buzzers podcast. We're so happy you're joined us today, and you're going to be as well. This is really going to be a special show today, one of our best. I'm Edwin Stepp, your host and an executive editor of Produce Buzz. I'm joined once again by Teresa Nolan, the founder and president of Produce Buzz, along with Rick Stepp and Cynthia Benedetto, both contributing editors to Produce Buzz. Now, listeners, today is going to be very special. We have found one of the most fun guys in the world. He proclaims himself a fun guy, and he also happens to grow a fun guy. Today, we have as our very special guest, Greg Carter of Deep Woods Mushrooms in Mills River, North Carolina. He has been growing mushrooms now for 20 years or more.
Yes.
Greg has developed ways of growing mushrooms that come as close as to how they are grown in nature as you can get for cultivated mushrooms. And we're going to learn why that is important in the quality, both in taste and nutrition.
We're going to talk to him about that today, what he is doing, how it's different from what you're going to get in the grocery stores. And he teaches people how to forage for mushrooms, and he teaches people how to grow them naturally in their backyard. So we're going to talk to him about that. So, Greg, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome.
My pleasure.
And let's start off with a little bit about your background. You've been doing this for 20 years, but you didn't start growing mushrooms.
No.
How did you get into it?
Quite by accident. Back in 1999, I was discussing with the widow lady across the street unique Christmas gifts to give family and friends. And she said, well, have you ever tried mushroom logs? And I scratched my head saying, no, never heard of it. And she said, well, look underneath those rhododendrons. She said, my husband and I did them 4 years previous. She said, they're probably growing. And I looked out there and the logs were covered with the prettiest shiitake mushrooms that I'd ever seen, because I'd never seen them before. And she said, oh, I'm tired of eating them. Take them home. And I did. And they were delicious. So I got online and I sought out a company that sold growing supplies and found the mushroom people in Somerville, Tennessee. And I ordered the product and hobbled through making 30 logs and gave away as Christmas presents.
You make the logs. Now, describe, well, no, we'll come back to that. I want to still get more of your background, but I've already got some questions popping up.
I was working in a factory in South Asheville.
Okay.
And the next year, well, when I gave the logs away as Christmas presents, I told people don't burn them as a Yule log because it'd be kind of expensive. And it takes 8 months to a year from the time you see the log till you actually get fruiting bodies with the actual mushrooms. Right. And so the following fall, people called me up and said, there's mushrooms growing on these logs. And I said, good, they will continue to grow. And I checked mine and they were growing. So I continued to work at the factory growing mushrooms. The next year I did 100 logs. And then the next year I did 200 logs. And then the next year I did 700 logs. And by 2006, it mushroomed into a business.
Mushroomed into a business. That's almost as good. Teresa loves puns.
Yes, that's quite funny.
I saw it.
I'm full of it. I mean, full of them.
That was good. Good play on words. Took you 20 years to think of that, I bet.
Yeah.
So you left the factory after they got enough mushrooms growing? How did that happen?
Well, I have to step back and say behind every successful farmer is a spouse that works in town. So when my youngest went to college, she gave me the blessing and said, you got 2 years to make a profit. And I worked my butt off and was able to make a profit. I found out really quick, you can't make a living growing mushrooms on hardwood logs naturally. You'll work yourself to death.
Really?
That's when I started teaching classes. So I brought people in, showed them how to seed the logs so they could do it themselves.
Right.
As I progressed in it all and started doing the foraging is when I thought, well, I can teach this as well. And I started my foraging classes. Still growing 75 to 100 pounds of shiitake mushrooms a week consistently through the summertime, but also augmenting it with the wild mushrooms that I could sell to the chefs as well.
Yeah. And you were foraging for those wild ones, and that was bringing you pretty good revenue.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Right. So between foraging, teaching, and growing shiitakes, right. making do, gaining a lot of knowledge.
Right. And how long did that take you then to leave the factory once you started first growing?
Probably 6 years.
6 years. Yeah. And now he's got a beautiful place here. I wish you guys could see it. Maybe at the end, I'll take the phone around and show you some things that he showed us earlier. But since we're only audio on the podcast, there wasn't much point to having that right now.
Yeah. So my farm's my 401k. I've been investing everything into the farm to get it up for agritourism. This is going to be my only source of income till I retire at 120. These mushrooms, I'm 90. These mushrooms will keep me really young.
That's right. He's eating those mushrooms to stay young so he can retire finally at 120. And he'll probably be in pretty good shape at 120. In the way
but I'm having fun.
Yeah.
Having fun.
From what he's been telling us about these mushrooms and their health benefits, yeah, he could be good at 120. Might break some records there. But this farm is beautiful. It's only, 2 acres, you said?
Correct.
But he's got things, he's using every square inch of this property to grow something. Can you tell us about that? Obviously the mushrooms are the biggest industry.
Correct. But then when my lawnmower went off to college, I tilled up my front yard to make a garden.
His lawnmower went off to college. I hope you guys got that.
And,
we did.
And so now I'm trying to grow everything for, I've got a wood fire pizza. So I'm growing things for farm to table dinners right here. And what I don't manage to grow or produce myself, pretty much I can take a 5-pound bag of mushrooms and jump on my bicycle and within 10 miles trade it for the very best beef, pork, cheese, eggs, chiropractic's appointment. My chiropractor likes mushrooms. So to have that as barterable and while it is truly a farm to table dinner, not all of my farm, but it's all through the barter system and being hooked up with all the tailgate market people, with all the foodies here in Western North Carolina.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So you're actually bartering for goods and services with your mushrooms. That's fascinating. That's very efficient and it's a good.
One person can't do it all. So if you have something, goods and services, and it just works.
Right.
Even gathering wood for my mushroom logs. If a farmer has a wild cherry growing over their fields, the wild cherry leaves are poisonous to hooven animals. So they'll have me come and cut the trees down that I'll in turn use as mushroom logs.
Wow.
It all works.
That's fantastic. You're building a community.
The community's here.
Yeah.
I just inserted myself.
Right. But it's great. I love that idea of the connectedness of it, rather than, my life has been going to grocery stores, giving them legal tender or your credit card. And I don't know where this food's coming from half the time. And I'm so disconnected from it.
Exactly.
But you've established a lifestyle here that is connected to the community, connected to the land. And there's a synergy that builds with that.
There's nothing better than to look down on your plate and know all the farmers that contributed to the food that you're eating right there.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And give thanks for them.
Right. That's great.
Yep.
Okay, let's get to the mushroom logs, because you said what was it you said that intrigued me, the way you phrased it? Making. You said making a mushroom log.
to seed a mushroom log. So you got to understand how the mushrooms grow in nature, and then you're mimicking that. Now, there's some that you don't even think about growing. Mother Nature does it very well, like morels. If you could grow morels, everybody would, and I wouldn't get $100 a pound for them when I find them in the wild in the springtime.
Right.
So I hope they never figure out a way to cultivate morel.
Right.
But the shiitake mushrooms is a parasitic mushroom that's eating its host. And what's its host? Well, all the oak trees, red oak, white oak, chestnut oak. It does work on sweet gum. It does work on wild cherry. And so basically you're taking the freshest, nicest wood that you can get and cutting it. Mainly in the winter time is the best time to inoculate wood. And
Inoculate. Can you explain that?
Okay.
Inoculate.
So what you're doing is putting little root balls into the log at a given. So you're seeding the log with the mushroom mycelium, and it's sawdust with the mushroom root system in it.
Good.
And you put it into the log and you wax over it. That keeps the moisture in and the bugs out until the mushroom mycelium starts eating the log. And then it's in there. You're not going to take it out. And it's growing in the log. And when there gets to be too much root system in the log, the mushroom feels it needs to reproduce because it needs a new host. So the mushroom, what we know it's the mushroom, is actually the reproduction part of the mushroom. What the mycelium in the log is actually the mushroom. The fruiting body is the reproduction part.
Okay.
And one mushroom can contain up to 1 million spores. And they can travel hundreds of miles, or more if they get caught in the upper atmosphere. And
so those are spread primarily by wind
for the shiitake. While I can talk about mushrooms in general, we can't generalize with any mushroom because they're all different,
right?
Just like people,
right?
Mushrooms are weird. People that grow them are weirder, but I can say that.
That's fantastic.
So you said you could get $100 a pound for morels? Is that right?
Oh yeah, they were going for more than that, and to the chefs in New York. Oh yeah.
Yeah, those are some very high morels.
You can't grow them.
Cynthia,
what them so desirable, you know. Truffles. The whole truffle industry is going to change because now they're cultivating truffles.
And are they growing them in North Carolina?
Oh yeah,
truffles.
In fact,
now can you grow them in your?
That's where the whole truffle industry started. Was in Carborough, North Carolina. The Garland brothers found a way to inoculate the root structures of the filbert trees, and you plant a bunch of inoculated filbert trees, and once again 5 to 7 years and all the stars align, you could be picking a lot of truffles.
White or black or both?
It's the black. It's the Italian black.
Yeah,
is what he is successfully growing, and I know people that are successfully growing that here in Western North Carolina.
Well,
and the quality's the same as
same as the Europeans. Oh yeah, it's the same mushroom. It's
you don't need a pig to find
mushroom, just being grown here.
You don't need a pig to find it.
Everybody'd be doing it. Yeah. But it's a very lengthy, drawn out process. But after 5 to 7 years, if you're successful, it's a very good payoff.
Yeah.
And people are investing millions of dollars in the whole truffle propagation now. Because as the demand for truffle goes up, the trufflers in Europe are aging out, and there's not a group of youngsters that care to go truffling. Right. And with the Asian market having disposable income, there's more people eating them.
Interesting.
So the cultivation and our area here in the United States, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, all has that same Mediterranean weather, but the pH of the soil is different. If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it.
Right. Cynthia, did you have a question? You were
no, I'm just saying you don't need any pigs to find the truffles.
Oh, you do. Oh, you do. After 5 to 7 years, you got to buy a dog. So there's a high bed and breakfast in Knoxville, Tennessee called Blackberry Farms, and they got on the truffle bandwagon probably 15 years ago, and were successful. and they are hosting the world's or the United States truffle conventions. So once or twice a year, you go to Blackberry Farm and you're going to get the full skinny on growing truffles and cooking truffles and marketing truffles, everything you need to know about truffles.
Yeah.
So the
Is
truffle.
it the filbert? Is it only the filbert tree that is a good host
No.
for
Now,
them?
as this science grows, there's more and more people working harder and harder than ever to cultivate truffles.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a whole, just like, 8-tracks and cassettes, what's going to win out down the road as far as the main method of cultivation, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's a science, and it's in its infancy. They say that the cultivation of truffles today is where the cultivation of white button mushrooms was 200 years ago.
200 years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a brand new science to cultivate these things.
Yeah.
So now the truffler at Blackberry Farms is training dogs, and a fully trained truffle dog is going to run you probably $30,000.
Whoa.
Wow.
What kind
Well,
of dog? What kind of, is it a
It can be
specific
any
type?
sniffer dog, any dog that has a nose, and just like any other scent trained dog, a drug dog, a cadaver dog, a bomb sniffing dog, it takes a lot of time to train an animal for scent training. But once it's done, you can walk through the woods and go find your truffles.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I
But
was-
we digress.
yes,
I don't-
we do. We have so much to talk about. We probably won't get to it. We might have to come back and do several episodes. But anyway,
Cheaper than a tractor. The
Well,
dog is cheaper than a tractor. So
yeah, and you don't want to dig up your roots either. So, right.
right. That's the main point, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the main reason. Just quickly, is anybody trying white truffles?
Oh, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
sure they are.
Yeah.
I'm sure they are. There's a guy locally, you might want to check him out, Carolina Trufflers.
Okay.
And he actually has patented some truffle spores that he is growing.
Okay.
So, like I say, it's in its infancy, and
Right.
everybody's trying to grab a hold of a tail.
Yeah.
Because there could be some very good money into it.
Right. Because I think the white truffles are actually more expensive than the black truffles, but for my
Okay,
what I've known,
and-
but
Yeah.
anyway, that's it. We
Yeah.
did digress here. We have so much to talk about what Greg's doing. We got off on what
Okay,
other people are doing.
So to grow, Mother Nature does it the very best. So the very best wild mushrooms are going to be the most nutritious and the most delicious. The ones grown naturally on logs, like I'm doing, is second best. And then the third best is only as good as the material that the mushrooms are being grown in. The white button mushroom industry is big ag, and the white button mushroom, it's a dung loving mushroom. And it was actually established by our agricultural department in the 50s to give farmers something to do with their farm waste, all their manure. They bought autoclaves for the ag extension agencies. An autoclave is a big pressure cooker. They use small autoclaves to clean operating room equipment, but they made them big enough to where they could dump a dump truck load of manure in, and they closed the doors and they put the steam and the pressure to it and clean all the bacteria out of it. And then they mix it with straw, and they myceliate these huge trays of straw and cow manure with the agaricus, the white button mushroom, portobello, baby bellas, they're all the agaricus. And they grow millions of pounds in the caves of Pennsylvania and all around the country. Millions of pounds a week. I can't compete with that, nor do I want to.
Right.
They can grow all the white button mushrooms in the world. I'm going to choose to grow the ones naturally on logs that, much better for you.
Right.
So that's
How
a big
about any psychedelics that you grow out there?
no, because it's still a scheduled 1 drug. And if they caught me with one on my property, they would take my whole farm. They're the easiest to grow. I was supporting Paul Stamets in the 70s.
Paul Stamets he's
He's the
mushroom.
mushroom guru in the world, in the United States, and everybody wants to copy Paul Stamets. His company, Fungi Perfecti, was growing tons of hallucinogenic mushrooms back before the Nixon administration said that those kids were having too much, that they had no medicinal value, even though they've been used for medicine since the beginning of time. And so now Paul Stamets is really trying to get the government to ease up so they can be studied for the drugs, the very, very good drugs that they were meant to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've done all the studies. They're so good. It's just that the pharmaceutical companies can't make money off of them. Yeah.
And that's why it's illegal. That's like a lot of things. Okay. So that's okay. So back to
Okay,
this,
so
these.
that's why I don't grow white button mushrooms.
Yeah.
I grow the ones that can be easily grown naturally on logs. Shiitakes is by far the easiest, and it grows on oak. If I have poplar wood, I can grow oyster mushrooms, and there's a whole host of oyster mushrooms you can grow.
That was a tongue twister there. Try that again.
I won't do that again.
A hoista, hoista, hoista.
So shiitake's oyster, and then reishi, a powerful medicinal that grows naturally on stumps. You can mimic that to grow the reishi, which has been revered in the Asian market since the beginning of time. It's a powerful adaptogen like ginseng, and it's been revered in the Asian world forever. And that's a very easy one to grow that you can turn into a tea or a tincture for health benefits.
And so that's how it's consumed, is teas,
Correct.
tinctures. You don't
eat it,
yeah.
but you would turn it into medicine.
Right.
What's the name of that mushroom again?
Reishi, Reishi. That's the common name. The Latin name is Ganodurum lucidum. And
Hey, watch it. This is a family show, Greg. We don't allow language
well,
like
I got to know a little bit of Latin. In the Mushroom Club, if you're given common names, they kind of snub you. So you kind of got to learn the Latin names if you're talking to the Mushroom Club people,
Right.
to be proper. Yeah.
Yeah.
You say tomato, I say tomato. No, they like the Latin.
And what type of stumps did you say you have to have for the?
Well, so in growing the red reishi, I take a piece of firewood sized piece of log, maybe 10 inches in diameter and 15 inches long, and I drill holes in the bottom, and I put the spores in the bottom of the log, and I bury it 2/3 to make it think it's a stump, and then the mushrooms will grow out the top.
Why does the stump have to think it's a
Didn't-
stump to grow it?
Didn't you say poplar wood
That's
was what
for
you?
the oyster mushroom for the
Oh.
reishi. So you have to know how they grow in the wild, and it's a science. I mean, everything's written down, so you know how it grows in the wild, and then you do your best to mimic that.
So it could
Some
be any
being
kind
a
of
lot
stump.
easier than others, and like I try to tell people, start with your shiitakes and oysters and your reishi, and then expand as your knowledge expands, and see if you can grow it. But like I've tried growing the lion's mane mushroom. To try and grow that naturally on wood, you get these small fruiting bodies, and they're not any bigger than the size of a silver dollar. You can grow them better on sawdust blocks, and you'll get 2 to 4 pound fruiting bodies. But I go out in the wild in the spring and the fall, and I can collect 20-pound fruiting bodies from the trees in the wild.
Just naturally out
And
there.
naturally, and they're going to be the very best.
Right.
Oh, by the way, the lion's mane mushroom tastes like crab meat, and it's been studied by our FDA, and they say that there's properties in the lion's mane mushroom that repairs damaged nerves. So, and people with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and neuropathies are all getting good results from the lion's mane mushroom.
Interesting.
So you're not growing the lion's mane yourself. You're just harvesting them in the wild because it's a better place
Correct.
to get them. Yeah.
Correct. Now,
I
I
actually
do grow
tried-
a few logs just to show people not to do it. Go get it in the wild.
Yeah. I actually bought 2 lion's mane mushroom logs and grew them in my basement, and they were great, but they were, the sawdust logs. So
Yeah,
You know.
Gotcha. They grow much
Right.
easier on the substrates than to try and
Uh-huh.
inoculate the wood. But the ones grown on wood are going to be more nutritious, more medicinal than,
and
Right.
what trees do they like? The lion's
Um,
mane? What-
they have a host of trees, but maple and sweet gum. Not sweet gum, no. It grows on a lot of them, but maple and birch. Yeah,
Okay.
birch or beech nut. I use it all.
Mhm.
One of those big,
Whether it works, that will show in a year or two. What mushroom has done for me basically is taught me patience, because whatever you're doing with mushrooms, it takes a long time. 6 months to a year for your incubation. And then so it just is a time consuming. Nothing happens fast.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's better quality. Usually things that take longer time, like fine wines.
Yep. Exactly right.
So, okay, so let's get back to the process. You started to tell us about making the logs.
Okay.
You got the mycelium planted and inoculated with
Yes.
the log. Okay,
They
so
incubate in a shady area, at least 80% shade, and for a full year. And after a full year, they should start fruiting naturally, which means your logs are going to go off and you're going to have lots of big, beautiful mushrooms. For me, as a commercial grower, after they fruited that first time, I have to control the moisture because I want a consistent amount every single week to take to my tailgate markets and to have for my chefs. And so I control the water. After the first fruiting, I can soak a group of logs and get all my mushrooms within a week to 10 days. And then they need to rest 8 weeks. And so I've got my groups set up in stacks of 20, 8 stacks of 20, and I can cycle those logs through. So all through the summer, I'm having a consistent amount of shiitake mushrooms.
Yeah.
And that's the main crop. And I, like I say, right now, I'm growing approximately 30 to 40 pounds a week. But I cut back this year and not supplying chefs. That's just for my markets.
Yeah.
Now I'm taking that time. I would grow another 30 or 40 pounds for the chefs, teaching classes.
Yeah. Fantastic. So the first year, you just put it out in the back and shade.
And they don't do a thing.
They don't do a thing. But once you get that first harvest, then you soak the log the next time?
Yes. And once again, I'm mimicking Mother Nature.
Yeah.
So the mushroom's living in the log, and I throw the log over to my tank, and it hits the ground, and that mimics thunder, and it shakes all the molecules up. And then I throw it in a big tank, and the logs will absorb all the moisture. What isn't wood gets filled up with water, and the mycelium feels threatened. And there's just too much in there. And he says, I need a new host. And it pops out its fruiting body to spread its spores.
Wow.
Naturally.
Yeah.
And within a week to 10 days, I have all my mushrooms. I can set that stack down.
Right.
And it rests for 8 weeks.
Yeah. And then you start the process over.
And then yep.
But that was interesting what you said. You throw the log on the ground to mimic thunder. So thunder actually.
Why, when do you, and all your mushroomers that go out and forage will say the best time to go out is a couple of days after a thunderstorm.
Wow. That's really interesting.
And that's why.
Yeah.
It's not only because of the rain, it's that thunder does, even the lightning. Lightning will cause mushrooms to flush. So I've seen it where logs, where the ground around trees that have been struck by lightning will flush furiously. Oh yeah,
that's fascinating.
So what about when you say like thunder? Is it just the vibration?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The vibration in the ground shakes up the molecules in the logs, and this happens in nature. And so all I'm doing is mimicking Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Once you learn how they grow, and where they grow, and when they grow, you can hopefully mimic them.
Yeah. And you're not the thunder they get, your logs get, isn't as good as you throwing it on the ground.
Well, once I
I'm joking a little bit.
No, but once I soak the logs, then I'm in control of the moisture.
Right.
It's that first 8 weeks in the spring and summer.
Yeah.
I got to cover all my logs because I don't want the rain to hit them and they go off, because when it comes time to soak them, then I won't have the mushroom.
Right.
But after I've soaked them the first 8 weeks, all my groups have been soaked, then I'm in control of the moisture.
Yeah. How many years can a log produce mushrooms?
There's
how long is a piece
variables.
Of string?
There's so many variables.
Yeah.
The rule of thumb is 1 year for every inch in diameter. It's going to fruit mushrooms.
Wow.
That it goes all over the board in my 20 years of growing mushrooms. Some will last 10 years or better. Some will crap out after 2 years.
Yeah.
And so just that, now I can watch my logs that I'm using to inoculate.
How long are these logs, and what's the diameter that you work with
Okay,
primarily?
the ideal diameter would be 4 to 8 inches, and length 3 to 4 foot, depending on how much you want to carry. And it's changes
Yeah.
for everybody, you know.
Right.
So a little old lady can cut 2-foot long.
All right.
You know, a young strapping boy can cut 6-foot long.
Yeah. There's no magic to the
No.
length and the way the
No.
mycelium
Correct.
grows in there. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Got it. Fascinating. Okay. So, and then you may have already said this, but I'm asking you again, how many pounds of shiitakes on an, what did you say? 4 to 8 foot? No, 4 to 8 inches, 3 to 4 feet long.
Mine are 42 inches long. That fits into my containers and
Got it.
everything.
How many pounds on a log every, is it a year, or are we
Okay,
talking
so
about
I've been
fruiting
2
times?
years, 2 years of fruiting, 2.5 years, eight soakings, 8 flushes of mushroom. And what I have found over 20 years of doing it, you're getting approximately a half a pound per log, per fruiting, for the length of the log. It works on a bell curve. Once you put that mushroom seed into the log, or spores, you put it in there, it's going to start eating on that. And the first couple flushes, you're going to get some big honking mushrooms, and a lot of them. But as that mushroom's eating the nutrients out of the log, you're going to get less, and they're going to be smaller. So
Right.
it works on a bell curve. And then finally, they're just going to crap out.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get anything because all the nutrients are gone.
Yeah,
And
they're eating up that log.
it's eating it up to where it's nothing but a rotten old punky piece of wood that you would step on in the woods naturally.
Yeah. What's the average price per pound for shiitakes? Normally,
It all depends who's setting it.
Yeah.
There's no average.
There's no
It's
average.
whatever the market can bear.
Right.
I'm getting $1 an ounce, so $16 a pound
Right.
for my shiitakes.
And your shiitakes are probably a little heavier than what we get in the grocery store, right? Because you were showing us, he took us out back and showed us some, and he picked, I don't know, do you say picking mushrooms? What do you say? Anyway, he picked a couple off, and he broke them in, and he was showing us how dense they were, thick, meaty. I don't know if they're heavier, but they seem to have a better texture than what you get in the grocery store.
Yeah, but it's possible, you know, if they get rained on, they're going to suck up the moisture like a sponge, and
So,
you can actually wring it out of the mushroom. I can't sell those at the market.
They don't want them.
No, they're more water than anything else.
Right.
But my mushrooms are meatier. There's a lot more meat. When you go to those ones grown on sawdust and break them apart, they're going to be very thin, mostly gills, very little meat. Whereas mine, you have very little gill, and it's solid meat, and it's just much better.
Yeah. So that's an indication for selecting mushrooms. I don't know if you have a choice in a grocery store. In some places they sell in bulk, but if I was going to buy bulk shiitakes in a store or market, I would flip them over and look for that gill to.
No,
no,
you ain't going to tell the difference.
No, okay.
You're not going to tell the difference. What you want to do is ask the produce manager, are these log grown shiitakes, or are they sawdust grown? The price is going to determine that. If they're $3, if they're like $6 a pound, they're grown on sawdust.
Yeah.
If they're 10 to 12 or more dollars a pound, they're grown on wood.
Right. And there's
and you might not see a difference.
Right. But you
But
taste
mine
the
are
difference,
better.
right?
Exactly.
Especially texture, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I guess I see over here, he's got a table over here close by, the mushrooms spread out in the sun. Look like drying racks. Are you drying those mushrooms?
They will be dried, but shiitake mushrooms is a natural source of vitamin D.
Oh.
And you can sun a shiitake mushroom gill side up, and just like your skin absorbs the sunlight and converts it to vitamin D, the mushrooms do too.
Ah.
So you can sun your shiitake mushrooms for about 2 hours and they'll start out at approximately 4 IUs of vitamin D. After 2 hours, they'll be up to 12 IUs of vitamin D.
An IU is what is that?
Unit of measure for
something
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, but it will triple the amount.
I thought you were going to throw some Latin at us again.
No.
So,
they'll triple the amount of vitamin D in as little as 2 hours.
yeah. And vitamin D is very difficult to get through eating. Normally you have to get through the sunshine.
Very
right? Is there any other fruit or vegetable?
But there's a handful of mushrooms that you can sun to increase the vitamin D.
That's fascinating.
And so why not? So this is going into my shiitake product. So any of the mushrooms that I don't sell on the Saturday market, they get dried, and I sun them to increase the vitamin D.
Okay.
And then I dry them and crush them into a powder
Oh.
that I call shaky taki.
Shaky taki. Oh, that's clever.
And
All
you
right.
just shake it on your food for the good mushroom flavor without the texture issue.
Okay.
My
There you
wife
go,
has-
Cynthia.
My wife has a texture issue with mushrooms. She says
They're
she
too mushy.
she just doesn't like the texture.
I agree 100%. And I have not, I don't like them so much that I don't even want to try the shiitake. I don't want to try the oyster. And I used to work for a purveyor, and we would sell to chefs. So they were at my disposal, but no, I'm just not going to do fungus.
Most people that don't like mushrooms grew up on them slimy white button mushrooms out of a can that they picked off their pizza and pulled out of their spaghetti. Let me tell you, the taste and texture of some of these wild mushrooms are culinary treats that very few people will ever experience unless you go get them yourself. The chicken of the woods has the texture of a chicken breast and a flavor that's going to knock your socks off.
Yeah.
And there's the beefsteak mushroom, which is the only mushroom you can eat raw safely. And it has the texture of veal and a lemony flavor that's going to knock your socks off. And they're just culinary treats that you'll never get in a grocery store. And very rarely you will find them on even a 5-star chef's restaurant's menu.
That beefsteak, he has one growing out here that just is a volunteer. I guess you call it. It's wild. It just, and he says they're rare, but one popped up on a stump he's got out here, and he was showing it to us, and he was touching it, and it was actually bleeding. It looked like raw meat.
Wow.
And
Did you video that?
I did, and I maybe
good.
afterwards. I don't want to take Greg's whole day, but I might go out there, at least me go out and show you can see it before you sign off. But he said, as you mentioned, probably heard that because Teresa did a short segment for us on one of our first episodes about mushrooms, just the basics.
Right.
And one of the things she pointed out was you're not supposed to eat mushrooms raw.
Correct.
And this beef steak, though, you can. And
can.
Is it the only one that you're aware of?
That's all the guidebooks say. You should cook all mushrooms.
Right.
Except, like I say, you can speak about mushrooms in general, but you can't generalize about mushrooms.
Yeah, we spoke in mushrooms generally with Teresa.
So yeah, that's the only one. And you know, even those white button mushrooms that you get in a salad bar, and everybody loves them. They're grown in manure. Now that's pasteurized manure, but realize it's also big ag, and they're going to cut corners every dang step of the way for the bottom line.
Yeah.
And so I highly recommend you cook those mushrooms.
Right. Yeah. Great point. He also said that beefsteak is quite coveted by sushi chefs.
Yeah.
So it is the sushi. Did you say it's the sushi mushroom or something?
Sushi of the woods.
Sushi of the woods.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Because people don't know what they're eating. It has a lemony kick to it that is just totally bizarre. The texture is like veal, and it's just bizarre, and people don't know what they're eating. And that's the whole thing, is to serve people something really bizarre that they don't know what the heck it is.
I can imagine that'd be fantastic on, just sashimi, probably just slice
I
it
make
up.
beefsteak jerky out of it. I'll slice it thin.
Oh, wow.
I'll marinate it overnight beefsteak in beef jerky spices and then dry it.
Wow.
And you get them really good spices with that mushroom afterburner and that little bit of citrusy lemoniness.
Fantastic. Do you sell that?
No. If
Just
you would,
for you.
it would be way too
You're
expensive.
hogging it all. I tell you what, I thought you.
I couldn't price it well enough. There's no way.
Well, speaking of, I don't think you have an online store to sell stuff, do you?
No.
But you should.
I'm Johnny Mushroom Spore, the local guy sharing news about mushroom. I can't supply the world, don't want to supply the world. And if you buy my product here in Western North Carolina and go back to New York, California, Florida, and want more, I will ship it to you.
Yeah.
But you're not going to find it on our website.
Right.
I'm not here to supply, nor could I. Okay, the lion's mane tincture. I had a woman come to the market, and she had been debilitated with Lyme's disease for years. And I told her that this helps with nerve damage, and she tried it, and you could see relief come over her as she sat in her wheelchair. Little did I know she was also a blogger. And the next week I had calls from people all over the world hunting lion's mane tincture. I can't. Now mine are made the way it was made 2,000 years ago. I'm using whole fruiting bodies, soaking them for 2 months of the very best mushrooms. They're either log grown or they're wild harvested. The very best, the way they do now. In order to supply the masses, they're growing mycelium on grain and tincturing that for your stuff that you find in GNC and all your other supplements.
Right. Yeah,
that's the cheapest way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you should check out Greg's website, deepwoodsmushrooms.net. He's got some interesting information there and shows you some of the mushrooms. And he does give classes for foraging and for showing you how to grow them yourself in your backyard, the right way, the best way. And if you're coming to Western North Carolina, we do have an international audience for this show, so we're not going to encourage them to start calling you.
Okay.
But if you are coming to Western North Carolina, it's a beautiful place to visit, to tour. You should reach out if you want to get a class from Greg. He books up fast, so don't be surprised if you have trouble booking. But if you're
coming to the area, book at home. Don't wait to get here because more than likely I'm already filled up.
Yep. So anyway, wanted to give that plug.
I hosted a group last month. It was a friendship forest group. It's state level, and so the head of the equivalent of our USDA. Agricultural department, the head of the Forest Service of the Republic of Georgia came to Western North Carolina, and all the forest managers, so they could bring back information to the Republic of Georgia. So they visited DuPont State Forest, they visited Pisgah National Forest, they went to the Great Smoky Mountain Forest, so all the foresters could exchange information. One of the ladies on the entourage was a member of our mushroom club, and she said, well, if we're in Mills River, we got to go see the mushroom man. So I was hosting these people, and we cooked mushroom pizzas for them.
Oh, wow.
And, now I am international, so
right. That's great.
They're already there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Go ahead, Teresa.
Is there a mushroom season? Is there any time of the year that mushrooms can't be found growing wild? Or
no, around in Western North Carolina, it's 4 seasons. Yeah, there's times I've been out in the woods in the middle of the winter time and finding frozen oyster mushrooms. I call them oyster sickles, and I take them home and thaw them out, and they eat just like fresh.
Wow.
Yeah,
really.
They're
so
out.
Can you freeze mushrooms?
Oh yeah,
and they're just as good after you thaw them.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Some.
Yeah,
you
depends.
can't generalize.
Yes, you can't generalize. That's the lesson of today, kids.
You can't generalize.
You can talk generally about mushrooms, but you can't generalize about mushrooms.
Yeah. I mean, they'll all dry well. They just don't all rehydrate well.
Okay.
So you just have to know what to do with what mushroom.
Right. Got it. Okay. Tell our listeners how best to store mushrooms, any kind, or shiitake seems to be your specialty, but
you should never store your mushrooms in plastic. Even though the white button mushroom industry puts them in them plastic tins with saran wrap over the top. The mushroom world is closer to the animal world than the plant world, insofar as mushrooms put out heat, carbon dioxide, and H2O. So storing them in plastic, they're going to heat up and sweat and rot very quickly. So you store them in paper bags in your refrigerator. Now, some can go right in the refrigerator, but your oyster mushrooms, you want them a little bit more damp. So I say put them in your crisper tray in your refrigerator. Okay.
But still in a paper bag.
In a paper bag.
And do you want to keep them away from moisture, or is moisture good?
Everyone's different.
Okay, you can't.
You can't. So some people say you don't wash any mushrooms. Well, you wouldn't wash any of your agaricus because they're mostly water. The shiitake mushrooms is a very dense, dry mushroom, and I add water to it while I'm cooking, or sherry, or whatever that you're cooking.
Some really good water.
Yeah, some really good water. So once again, you can't generalize. You got to know which ones you can. All the mushrooms I have, mainly, they don't need cleaning. I mean, they're growing on my logs, and they don't get exposed to dirt or whatever.
Right.
But once again, cook all mushrooms because they are grown naturally outdoors, and I don't know what bugs are getting up in there and maybe planting larvae or whatever.
Yeah.
So cook them thoroughly.
So that's the main reason to cook them. It's not because the mushrooms do they
Mushrooms
contain?
put out a gas not unlike rocket fuel that needs to be cooked off, or it causes gastrointestinal upset.
Okay.
And then some of the wild mushrooms, they're just so fibrous. The guidebooks will say edible with caution. Well, if you don't cook them thoroughly, cut them up small, you're going to have gastrointestinal upset.
Right.
You're going to burp a lot and fart a lot.
I do that already. Is
Right.
that
I breathe. But no, some people, and if you're used to eating those mushrooms raw, keep eating them. They ain't going to hurt you. I mean, but if if you're not used to eating mushrooms, then you'd be advised to cook them because they'll give you a bellyache.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Rick mentioned this in one of our past.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you a question. I live on 70 acres in northern Minnesota, and I have a really busy highway that runs right by my house and property, where I could sell just about anything if I produce it. But a few years ago, we had a major storm that came through, and I've got a lot of downed trees, birch, poplar, ash. I see mushrooms all the time, but I never even think about harvesting them because I don't want to get poisoned.
Right.
I think you're inspiring me to start a mushroom farm here.
Well, now with all your downed wood, that would not be appropriate to inoculate to start growing mushrooms. You got to cut the wood, the freshest, nicest wood that mushroom likes, because you're putting the rotting agent in it. If your wood is sat around more than about 3 months, nature has already seeded that log with things that will compete with whatever you're growing. So that's what, and it's very hard for me to for people to let me cut down their oak trees, their nice, fresh, young oak trees to make into mushroom log. So getting the good wood is become my hardest endeavor in this whole mushroom farming business. So if you have 70 acres with lots of, you definitely should start growing mushrooms. Start out as a hobby. I tell people start out slow, do a few, get to know the mushrooms. And then if you will care to go full black, you got the knowledge, go full black. And you're only limited to, let me tell you, it's very labor intensive. And nobody, I've been doing this for 20 years and I have no competition. Nobody wants to work as hard as I do to bring mushrooms to the
Yeah.
But to have a few logs in your backyard to grow shiitakes, everybody should have a few logs, and then however much more you want to experiment. Once you have the drill bit, then if a tree falls over, you look to see what kind of mushrooms grow on it and plug it.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great.
I have maybe 40 acres of wooded area. I mean, I could cut fresh trees if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But I would still have to be careful not to expose those to the other dead things that are growing.
Once you cut your wood and you isolate, but realize you might not have to cut wood. You might have a lot of good wild edibles that are there anyways. You might have a patch of morels in your backyard, or one hen of the woods growing in your backyard could weigh up to 30 pounds, and you process it and put it in your fridge. So however you want to do it, you want to learn mushroom hunting, there's a bunch of mushroom clubs in your area. You seek them out.
Yes.
If you don't have a mushroom club in your area, call your university and talk to the mycology department. And they know mushroom.
We do have a big club here in Duluth.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
I've never looked into it, but I'm going to.
I have that influence on a lot of people.
Yes.
And that's the way you get started. Go walking around with people that know more. I know a lot about mushrooms, but there's people in our Asheville Mushroom Club that make me look dumb. Everybody mushrooms for their own reason. And mine is commercial grower, whereas some use it for dyeing clothing. Some just want to check off every mushroom in the mushroom book. So everybody has a reason to be in the mushroom club. But we're all a bunch of fun guys. So
Fungi. I want to
With
go
high
back to-
morals.
yeah.
High morals.
Oh. Did you see Greg's shirt? You probably can't see it.
No, I did not.
Says shiitake happens.
Oh, I love it.
He probably does sell those. You should sell those online at least. Is that
I
yours?
don't sell
Okay.
anything
No, I'm
online. That's not my, that's
I
not
get
my
it.
thing.
You got too
know.
much to do here.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you broached that you said mushrooms are closer to the animal kingdom than the plant kingdom. And we've mentioned that before on our show, that they're not either in the plant kingdom or the animal kingdom. They're kind of in their own world.
Realize it's one of the 4 major sciences. Everything on this earth is cataloged under a Latin name under the 4 major sciences. Your post-honorary degrees come from the sciences. So you got everything's listed under animal, vegetable, mineral, fungal world.
Okay.
Okay. It was up until the late 1700s that the science world classified them as plants. And then some smart scientists came along and said, hey, these don't photosynthesize. The fungal world became known, but realized it's been here since the beginning of time, doing what mushrooms do, cleaning up the environment and breaking down organic material and doing what mushrooms do. Okay. So it was a new science insofar as that way, but it's an understudied science because at that time, most people's thoughts about mushrooms were they were flavoring for foods. They had no nutritional or medicinal value, and watch out, someone will kill you.
Right.
Right? But we know penicillin is a fungus, and it's penicillin is a genus. There's over 100 strains of penicillin. We know it as a powerful antibiotic, but the blue in your blue cheese is actually penicillin mold.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to we don't think about fungus, but once you think about it, it's immense.
Right.
It's huge.
Right.
And realize only 10% approximately, I'm generalizing, but only 10% of the fungal world produces what we call mushrooms.
Okay.
Realize athlete's foot is a fungus. It was virtually unknown of in North America until our soldiers came back in the 1900s from building the Panama Canal, and they brought athlete's feet back on their feet.
Huh.
That's why we have it here.
Right.
But you think of coronavirus, and how quick did that spread around the world?
Right.
And that's part of the fungal world.
Yeah.
Bacteria is your bacterial flora in your gut. The world of mushrooms is huge. I was at a market and my table was loaded with wild mushrooms. And this guy walks up and he says, I'm a mycologist. He says, but I don't have a clue what's on your table. And I says, really, sir, what's your field of study? And he says, well, I'm a research professor at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and I study molds and funguses on shellfish. Go figure. Just like if you ask your oncologist, what's the fungus between your toenails, he's going to send you to another specialist.
Right.
That,
It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
Now, you told us something before we started the podcast here. Greg was showing us around the farm, and he mentioned about this world of we're gonna stick with mushrooms. I think you can correct me on this, but the network of mushrooms and fungi underneath the ground that spreads out is like a communication network. Can you tell us about that? The
largest living organism known to man is a mushroom mycelial mat up in the Pacific Northwest. One mushroom root spans an area of over 2,400 square acres.
Wow.
And they say it resembles the World Wide Web, or the World Wide Web resembles the mushroom mycelium. It started from one spore and traveled that one computer, and we get the World Wide Web around the world.
Right.
Okay? So that's the comparison you can make.
Yeah. What are they communicating?
Well, all sorts of things. So the marine biologists are trying to figure out the whales and what the whales and dolphins are saying, but the communication between the fungal world and the plant world under our feet would be deafening if we could hear it. I mean, there's just so much communication that we don't even know. I've got a member of our mushroom club, and he's working on a project to bring back the American chestnut. And they're trying to match the mycorrhizal network that was here 100 years ago to help the American chestnut.
Oh, great.
So they're trying to combine the fungus and the plant for a healthier plant.
Fantastic.
This is what Mother Nature's been doing ever since the beginning of time.
Right.
And
Right.
we just don't got a clue yet.
Yeah.
I mean, the science is way understudied.
Right.
Now it's burgeoning. Between mycelium and hemp, we can rid the world of plastic.
Oh,
If industry and the buying thoughts of America allows it to.
right. It's
Industry.
like what you were saying.
Enlighten us. Continue on that thought.
Well,
was-
100 years ago, hemp and cotton were dueling it out in Congress, and cotton won over because cotton's a more renewable product. A pair of hemp blue jeans would last you a year in the mines of California, and a pair of cotton blue jeans you're going to replace in a month. But it's more renewable, and that's why cotton got the go-ahead over hemp. Hemp is the strongest fiber known to man.
Wow.
So, and mycelium, every mushroom's mycelium, the root structure, has a different tensile strength. So soon you're going to see all your clothes are going to be made of mushrooms, of the mycelial. So they're growing these huge mats, just like you would a huge piece of cloth, but it wears 10 times more than cloth.
That's fantastic.
So industry has to back this. I mean, IKEA is now making all their electronic packagings out of sawdust, myceliated and dry. So when it goes to the landfill, it's just going to go to scrap.
Wow.
Ford is now implementing that in bumpers, where it would be styrofoam behind that plastic sheeting is now sawdust, myceliated and baked. So it's hard. So in 20, 30 years, when it goes to the landfill, it's just going to.
And it breaks down pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Packing peanuts, anything that can be made out of styrofoam can be made with sawdust myceliated.
That's encouraging.
And it just, industry's got to back it and jump on it.
Right. And that's the problem, because there's a lot of industries threatened, like you were talking about the pharmaceutical industry.
Here in Transylvania County, about 4 years ago, we got a new waste management person, a young guy in the waste management. And he proposed using mycelial mats at the landfill, because the landfill was breaking down. The dirt was exposing all the trash and whatnot. So they sprayed mushroom mycelium over the side. It's holding the landfill together.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's growing at the same time?
It's not growing any mushrooms. It's just.
But I mean, is it alive?
Yeah,
It's alive,
alive.
yeah.
It's just
Right.
growing and holding the banks together.
Right.
And that information has been around forever, but now we've got.
Yeah.
Have oncologists that are referring their patients to me for the turkey tail mushroom.
Right.
Because it keeps cancers from metastasizing.
Yeah.
Not the old guys, they're going to still prescribe whatever needs, but the new oncologists are now seeking out this.
Right. Are you
natural
growing
product.
turkey tails?
It grows wild.
Oh, okay.
I tried cultivating it years ago, and it was so aggressive that it started jumping on my other logs. So it's a wild mushroom, and I can harvest that.
There's plenty of it around.
And yeah, and so another thing I found is Mother Nature is going to put in plenitude what we need the most. You think of dandelions.
Right.
Every part of the dandelion is
Edible.
beneficial for you.
Yeah.
And it grows abundantly, but
Right.
we don't use it.
No,
Turkey
we mow it
tail
under
is
on our lawns.
Where if you look for it, you can find it.
Yeah, that's good. Now, is turkey tail only for medicinal, or is it edible? Or
No,
would
it's
you
just
eat
medicinal.
Right. Yeah.
It's too tough to eat.
And chicken of the wood, is that another one that you really can only get in the wild? Or is
Pretty
that
much. People grow it on sawdust. I know nobody who's successfully cultivating it on wood. Now I can stand corrected, but I know
But in the wild, it grows on wood.
Oh
chicken.
yeah. I found up to 40 pounds on one tree one time.
Yeah.
If a mushroom is growing on a tree, does that mean there's something wrong with the tree?
Oh yeah.
That the tree is
More
dying?
likely. Oh, more than likely. It's got a fungus in it, and yeah, that usually means it's dying. Now, how long it takes, that's another thing.
So a healthy tree will not allow a mushroom or resist a mushroom.
It
Yeah.
shouldn't.
Right.
It shouldn't be growing fungus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now trees will. There's certain mushrooms you don't want to grow because the parasitic ones are the easiest to grow. It's the ones that have symbiotic relationship, like the hen of the woods, like the morel. The fungus is living in the root system of its host as mycelium, and it's feeding the tree. The tree's feeding the mushroom. You won't see any fruiting bodies until the mushroom senses its host is dying. And then it says, oh, I need a new host. And it puts up its fruiting body to spread its spores.
Interesting.
Well, it might be 10 years before that tree falls over. It might be 10 years after the tree falls over.
Right.
That mushroom's in the ground saying, I need a new host, popping up its fruiting body.
Yeah.
So while mushrooming, the foraging of mushrooms, it's a very social thing. We get together and go and do a forage, but you keep your spots to yourself because you don't want anybody else to know where their mushrooms are at.
Right.
So you sneak to your spots and you don't let anybody know where they're at.
Yeah. So when I come take your foraging class, you're not gonna give me the best spots, are you? Okay, Greg. Greg's farm is right on the edge of the Pisgah National Forest here on, I know Teresa and Rick will know, 280, the road that goes between Brevard and Asheville by the airport, I think.
You're familiar with the Turkey Pens area of Pisgah National Forest? That's where I'm at.
That's some of the best hiking trails right through there.
But your farm is right on 280?
Right off of 280. I'm about a quarter mile up the mountain off the road.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Do bears eat mushrooms?
Oh yeah, and so do deer, and so do squirrels. When the squirrels start eating my mushrooms, I start eating the squirrels. The other white meat. And those ones are a little plumper and they're a little sweeter.
Hope you're not eating the white.
Well, my neighbor told me not to eat the white squirrel. He's feeding it. And I said, I'll save him for last. He'll be a lot fatter.
You really do. You really do eat squirrel. Oh, you do. Yeah, and it's good.
They'll eat my
Well,
mushrooms.
they're going to eat yours.
That may be a problem for me because we have a lot of deer on our land here.
Deer will eat them. I had a dog. I had a Great Pyrenees mix, and he passed away this past winter. And he kept the varmints out of the neighborhood. Well, now the varmints are coming back because we also have new neighbors that don't realize they can't leave their trash out overnight.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
And
no.
their trash cans out, and they're bringing the bears in.
All right.
I'm just gonna have to get another dog, and
Yep.
So I would probably have trouble growing mushrooms commercially with all the deer and the bear that we have back in our woods.
yeah, and also I tell people that are planning to grow commercially, get as close to your area as possible. You don't want them way out in the woods where you got to go and force them away. Everything here is in my backyard, so it's pretty controllable, you know.
But doesn't it have to be shady though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I live in the woods. I live on Deep Woods Road, hence Deep Woods Mushrooms. And yeah, when you live on Deep Woods Road, you.
Yeah, that's a problem for me because it's all pasture land around me.
Yeah.
I have to walk about 300 yards to get to the wooded area.
Yeah. And, you know, some people still do it. I mean, I shouldn't be growing mushrooms where I'm at. Mushrooms like it dark and dank, and I'm actually full southern exposure with no water on my property. But I'm collecting more rainwater and doing everything I can to shade my logs and whatnot. It's not the 100% most ideal place to grow them, but if I can grow them, I figure anybody can.
You don't have a well here? You just collect
I do have a well.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. But if my well dries up, then I'm blown out of the water, literally.
Yeah. Got it. He's got a lot of stuff growing here that's beautiful, all kinds of vegetables. And as I said earlier, he's not wasting his 1 square inch. Oh, back to things that eat mushrooms. Greg surprised me today that bees eat mushrooms.
Correct.
Oh.
And that's the newest and latest in beekeeping, is to introduce fungus to your bees in the sugar water in the wintertime. So mainly the chaga and the reishi mushroom, and there's another one that the bees will seek out the mycelium in nature naturally. They're good for us, they're good for the bees. And that's the whole newest and latest. Paul Stamets donated $100,000 to the entomology department at the University of Washington to study the effects. And they have found that by adding mushroom tea to your sugar water in the wintertime is helping with a whole host of things. And anything to help the bees, we need to do.
Right.
Do you recommend drinking chaga tea?
Oh, highly.
Chaga.
You're at, go get it. It's a
Yeah, we have it here in the woods, and I've got some in my freezer right now.
Yeah. Oh, it's powerful stuff. I actually do a trip every other year to Jackman, Maine to go harvest chaga to bring back here.
What is chaga pretty prevalent in Minnesota.
Yeah. And you got to get it where there's glacier soil. It grows here in Western North Carolina. What makes chaga medicinal is the birch tree is growing in glacier soil, and it's leaching all the good minerals out of the soil and packing it into the mushroom. Now, while the mushroom isn't edible, you would grind it or break it into small chunks and brew it into a tea. And let me tell you, it's powerful, powerful stuff.
And it's got a nice flavor to it too. My daughter Haley bought some from his market, the market from him the other day, and she made some, and really delicious. I thought it was
where
really
it grows the most, the people ain't using it. They just don't. When we were up in Maine, we were showing all my friends' neighbors what it was, and now they're using it. But prior to us introducing it to them, it's growing all over the place, but they ain't using it. Now they are.
And what is it good for?
Oh, a host of things. It's an adaptogen like ginseng and reishi, which means it adapts to you, but it's also a blood sugar moderator, an immune enhancer, a liver tonic, antiviral. If you know anybody that gets shingles, it knocks out the shingle virus very quickly. Everybody that drinks chaga, it'll knock out the shingle virus.
Is it easy to get in markets around the country, or is that no?
Pharmaceutical companies don't want you to know about this stuff.
Right.
It's too healthy.
Too much competition. Well, we could go on all day here, but I know Greg's got other things to do.
I got to go hunt mushrooms for market on Saturday.
And so we really should sign off. I want to give a shout out to my dear friend and one of our most loyal listeners to the podcast. She introduced me to Greg, or put me in touch with him, I should say. That's Andrea Eisen. She is one of our most loyal listeners, always commenting, always telling me how much she enjoys each episode. So thank you, Andrea. Thank you for being a great listener. And thank you thanks for connecting me with Greg. This has been fantastic. So thank you again, Greg, for joining us. Good luck foraging today. I hope you find a lot of delicious mushrooms out there, and I'll come looking for them at the market this week when you set up to sell them. There's so many more questions I had for you. I hope you'll come back and join us again to talk all things mushrooms. And I got to say, you really were a fun guy. Thanks a lot. Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the Produce Buzzers podcast, brought to you by Produce Buzz, the gathering place for lovers of fresh fruits and veggies. We hope you were entertained a bit and educated a lot about fresh produce. Be sure to join us next time, and please tell your friends to do so as well. Like, share, and comment on our Produce Buzz Facebook page, and check out our website at www.producebuzz.com. There you will find articles about fresh fruits and veggies, how to select, store, and prepare them, as well as lots of interesting facts about all the wonderful bounty the earth provides for us. Until next time, be fruitful and don't forget to veg out.